Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about next generation finance departments and the tools that use to be effective. I apologize in advance for my voice. I'm working on a little bit of a cold. I'm on the good side of almost being done with it, but it's affecting my voice a little bit. So apologize in advance for that. But I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your afternoon, especially here at the end of the year when it tends to be so busy for everyone. A couple things about our webinar today. We're going to be we're using GoToWebinar. So GoToWebinar doesn't allow you to speak directly to me, so you're going to have to communicate with me through the questions box on the GoToWebinar console. You can ask as many questions as you want, and I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I'll try to get back to you in real time, and if not, I'll answer your questions at the end. But thanks so much in advance for your clarifying questions that you have on anything I have to say or show to you today. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Tom Thornton. I'm the practice director for Sage Intacct at Net at Work. I've been in the accounting world forever, the accounting software world for almost 25, 30 years now. And I've worked around ERP software for small and medium-sized businesses for most of that time. I've had a lot of different roles on the product side, in sales, in marketing, and now I'm working with Net at Work since 2021 to help organizations understand and navigate through the transformation journey to next generation technologies like Sage Intacct. But we'll be talking about that in the context of finance in general today. What we're going to be talking about specifically are the characteristics of what we consider to be a next generation finance department and what they're able to achieve that previous generation finance teams might have struggled with. We'll talk about those specific benefits that your organization might be able to enjoy if you adopt these tools and embrace them and use them to their potential. And we'll talk about Sage Intacct specifically and the next generation benefits that it provides, and we'll actually go into a demonstration of some of those features in Sage Intacct before we wrap up. So that being said, let's jump right in. What do we mean when we say next generation finance department? So if you contrast this to the previous generation of accounting tools and technologies in IT, it was very IT heavy. There was servers involved, there's hosting providers. If you weren't hosting it on your own server, you had system requirements, you had remote desktop tools, or Citrix or things like that. And those tools, all of those ERP tools had to be upgraded from time to time. The underlying infrastructure had to be upgraded from time to time, which were due to security and compatibility issues. It was sometimes disruptive, sometimes resulted in downtime or causing compatibility issues or features to change or break. But generally speaking, people learn to really be frustrated by the technical aspects of these systems. Not only that, but the previous generation products often didn't work together very well. They were very monolithic and standalone. And if it wasn't from the same vendor, then it wasn't going to work well together. Even then, some of those products, even from the same vendor, required a pretty big heavy lift from IT and consulting to make them talk to each other. So that often resulted in fragmented reporting and a very difficult task for the finance team to get information reconciled between systems. And the other thing is that while they did provide some business process automation help, it didn't necessarily help you do your job much beyond that. So, it was still very much on the people involved in finance to really know what they were looking at, knowing what to ask of those systems, doing a lot of repetitive tasks that were not capable of being automated in those legacy systems. And so as a result, you kind of felt like your job was being defined by the limitations of the system rather than the system empowering you to be able to do bigger and better things as a finance team. So ultimately, if we had no IT headaches, if our systems all worked together, if they were really helping us and empowering us to be better at our jobs, and the systems were truly serving us and serving the mission of the finance department, then that's what next generation is aspiring to. So one of the defining characteristics from my point of view on this is that next generation financial organizations don't think about accounting software or a general ledger anymore. They're absolutely a thing. You have to do accounting. You can't stop doing journal entries and AP invoices and trial balance reports and things like that. You still have to do those things. But there was a mindset that existed for many years that the accounting software was a thing. Your other business applications throughout the office were their thing, and there was a painful task that was necessary anytime you needed to transfer data between them or reconcile data between them or synchronize data between those systems. When you start thinking about it as an ecosystem of applications that can and must work together, then you start thinking in the next generation mindset, and that allows you to start thinking about how do you prioritize the systems to modernize. How do you decide which systems make sense in the context of the other business systems in your office? Ultimately, you want to be able to achieve some of those outcomes we just described on the previous slide. That requires that you be thinking about all of those business applications where this data flows to and from as a single system. If they remain siloed, if you continue to have paper or Excel processes, manually transcribe or reconcile data between systems, and rarely report on all of it together because it's so hard to aggregate that information, then you're definitely living in the legacy world, and it's probably harming the effectiveness of the team and the productivity of the team at the same time. So what we talk about at Net at Work is the idea of thinking about this ecosystem of applications, once again, as a thing, as opposed to each one of those circles being their own independent thing. Left to their own devices, this is what a lot of organizations look like. They've got these different applications all floating in space, all being independently managed. Sometimes there's some data flowing to and from them, but often that data flow is manual. And as a result, these systems are not serving each other, and they're certainly not serving the organization effectively. When we talk about this, these domain-specific application platforms might be the exact right solution for your organization. You might be using Salesforce, and for the way that your organization conducts business, Salesforce is the exact right CRM. But if it doesn't talk to anything else in your back office, if any data flowing to or from Salesforce is having to be manually transferred, either through flat files or imports or whatever you're doing, then that's a hindrance on the data flow, and any hindrance on data flow means information is slowing down. That means the ability to understand the implications of that data is being delayed, and that's an issue. Also in this ecosystem, there's lots of little applications that are being used that should be integrated as well. So it might be a working trial balance, not a working trial, a month-end close tool, or an AP payment automation tool, or something like that. If these are not connected directly to your system, then that's something that may not work well. And then there's tools that may or should be being used to help tie data together, whether that's a BI tool like Power BI or Tableau or something like that. Once again, in the end, if you have the wrong tools, even using those platforms becomes hard because the source of data might be difficult to manage or work with. So once again, when we think about this, we think about this as an ecosystem, and we recommend to all of our clients that they examine and understand the benefits of using what they call integration platform as a service tools to help automate the data flows. And this can be between any application from any vendor, but the important thing is that those data flows, if they are non-existent or if they are manual, are having a material impact on the effectiveness of your finance team, because it is either killing their productivity while they manually deal with data, or there's data that's never being synchronized, in which case you have reconciliation issues, data quality issues, or data completeness issues. So once again, when you start thinking about this as an ecosystem, it becomes what we at Net at Work refer to as a digital operations platform. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So once again, going once again, back to the contrasting what, legacy versus next gen comparison here. I think about the sophistication of the ERP technology and related technologies as being on this kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid that we have here. And at the base of the pyramid, the thing that we all have to do is we all have to be compliant. We have to be able to keep the books. We have to be able to deliver basic financial statements to our leadership, to our creditors, to our boards, depending on what kind of business that you're in. But it's essentially, there's certain functions that you're just not able to avoid that you have to do as a finance team. Those who have the means and resources and technology will invest in automation to try to take some of the productivity losses that are occurring in manual situations and try to automate those. And so we're talk more about what those things are. And at the top of the pyramid are self-actualized adaptability, integration, and analytics that help us really understand, based on who we are in our unique circumstances as a business, the whole picture of who we are, how we're performing, both operationally and financially, and being able to have that information in near real time. So at each of these levels, compliance means basic bookkeeping, compliance reporting, meeting all of the minimum requirements we need to, stay out of trouble. Automation, workflow, custom reporting, recurring transaction automation, imports to avoid duplicate data entry. Once again, we're losing our productivity at the bottom layer and saying, how do we plug those holes? How do we make that better? When we get to the top, then suddenly the systems aren't just the systems, they're adapted to our unique circumstances. We get everything tailored to our business requirements and our evolving needs as those come. That customization is not a one-time thing, that's an evolving adaptability. Integration between key systems, whether that's specialized billing, or whatever CRM you may be using, if you have a budgeting and planning platform or your human capital management platform, all of these things have data that overlaps, or in some cases needs to flow between these solutions. Is that integrated? Is it synchronized? Is that data flowing the right direction with the right logic? And then once again, being able to see that complete picture of your organization across all of the different data sources that you have in your office. And without that context, do we really know how we're performing? Basic financial reporting will tell us how we're financially reporting. I can produce a P&L and a balance sheet and a cash flow statement. Great. Does that tell the whole story of how we're performing as a business? So when we're comparing legacy and next-gen organizations, legacy organizations using those client-server technologies that many of you use today are going to be able to do some of that with the native functionality, including some of the automation level stuff if you opt into optional modules and technologies. Some of that automation is achieved through third-party tools and OEM add-ons and ISV products. But some of it's just not achievable unless you get into custom development and building your own. And so as a result, that can be has two major risks associated. One is cost, and the other is sustainability. Anytime you start getting into one-off integrations, custom development, and things like that, you're putting yourself at risk that over time that system will stop working, or it'll degrade, or that with updates to those different applications that those connections will break, which is why a lot of people just don't do it. That's why these silos exist. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on an integration if it's just going to break over time. We can't afford that. Or if there's other risks that might undermine that investment. On the next gen side, if you're using the right set of next gen tools, you should be able to, with a single, fully scalable digital operations platform, be able to achieve all of these ends without any of those risks I just described. And I'll go into that a little bit more here in a minute. But once again, elaborating on those contrasting characteristics, when we're talking about next gen tools, they're designed to be dynamic and modular with self-provisioning. And what self-provisioning means is that if I decide that there's some incremental functionality, or I want to expand my use to the system, I'm able to do it in real time without having to go through a business transaction with the vendor. In our legacy systems, if I wanted to add a module or get additional users, often I had to contact the publisher or my reseller and go through a quoting process, send them a check, and then they would send me an activation code, and then it would, in some case, have to be installed and configured by a specialist who had familiarity with that technology. All of that goes away in NextGen. The other thing in NextGen finance tools, it should be something that could be managed by business users as opposed to IT or external consultants. Business users, meaning the finance team themselves, who understand the business aspects of how the business works, should be able to operate the tools and configure the system and adapt the systems to their needs without having to have a programming background or any other kind of specialized IT credentialing. I mentioned the getting away from the need for servers and upgrades. Next-gen products universally have a cloud-native multi-tenant infrastructure. What that means is that you don't even need to know where the server is. I always use an example of, what server is my Gmail account on? Nobody knows. Nobody cares, right? Because you just use it and it works, and you don't need to know what database technology Google is using or what server has your email account, because that's the beauty of a SaaS solution, is that I don't have to think about it. There's not my own server. There's no version of Gmail that ever has to be upgraded for me. It just works. In our legacy accounting and other business application software, we all had our own copy. Sometimes it's on our own server, sometimes it's on a hosting partner server, but there's my own copy. In that version, we're constantly asking ourselves, what version are you on? What year? Are you on 2022.1 or what version that is? In the next gen world, we don't even think about that because the system is always current. The system is always updated to the latest version. There's nothing for you to do. There's no downtime. So that leads into the fourth point, which is those upgrades are frequent, automatic, seamlessly applied with no downtime. And just like Gmail, I'll stay on that analogy. Gmail is being updated all the time. They're rolling out features and they're fixing defects and they're doing all kinds of stuff. And they don't need to make a big production of it because they've got a process that makes that completely invisible to you. Same thing with next-gen ERP. Next-gen ERP is constantly being updated. They do have a formalized release process so that those new features are released on an orderly fashion, but there's nothing for you to do. There's no IT people to engage. There's nothing to break. It just works. Integrations are an important thing. When I showed the diagram a minute ago that talked about all the different applications that exist in a typical business's back office ecosystem, you do have all those systems, accounting, CRM, budgeting and planning, and payroll, and all those. In a next-gen context, those integrations should be easy. And many of those integrations are pre-built so that it's an easy to deploy solution where it's, provision, point and click, and next thing you know, your accounting and your payroll systems are talking directly to each other. In the legacy systems, sometimes there's integrations available. More often, just about everybody I talk to in the legacy platforms are like, oh, we import a file from our payroll provider. And that's okay. That's better than keying it for sure. But it's also, the question is, why isn't it just coming straight into your solution, straight into your software? And usually it's because it is either actually or perceived to be painful and costly to try to achieve that. So once again, these are things that would be differentiating experiences between next gen and legacy. Another common pain point that we hear from clients who are on legacy platforms is the reporting is difficult, that they want is difficult to achieve. So in next gen, your expectation should be is that I have very powerful native reporting that's dynamic, interactive, and analytical, meaning that dynamic meaning I can customize the output to my preference. Interactive means that I can drill down and interrogate that data directly from the report, and analytical means that I can not only present it in a traditional financial statement format, but I can slice and dice information, both numbers and visually, from a presentation standpoint and present that information both to myself and to other stakeholders in my organization. And legacy systems, people achieve that, but almost always through third-party tools. It's either a bolt-on sold by the software publisher, or they're going out and finding Power BI, or they're Tableau, like I mentioned, or they're using Crystal Reports or some other reporting add-on that's completely outside of the accounting system, and it has nothing in common from a user experience standpoint. So once again, it's they're using an add-on technology to achieve the end that is native within a next-gen solution. Finally, just the user experience is a big deal, and I talk about that. I could say all day that, you know, products like Sage Intacct have a really cool dynamic modern UI, and it's really cool that you can get to it from anywhere. And you might say that's super subjective. What I can say though is that there's a lot of people I know who use legacy systems that feel like they're trapped in 2005. And that's because their user experience feels very much like that. The product hasn't modernized in that period of time. It's very much a Windows desktop application user experience. Even if they're connecting it through the cloud, they're going through a remote desktop connection or some other desktop streaming technology. And it just looks and feels, and your interaction with it is very much that decades-old experience. And so in a next-gen context, it should feel very much like you're using a very, very current, state-of-the-art, cloud-native, web-native experience with all of the advanced user experience options that you would expect in the most technically advanced cloud applications. So I know I talked a lot there, but this is really important stuff, because a lot of times people say, what do I get by going to next gen that I don't already have? If the answer, if you're asking it, can I still do a journal entry? Can I still print a trial balance? The answer is, if that's all you care about, you should stay on your legacy system, because it's probably cheaper. But there's a lot of advantages that you can get when you do your total cost of ownership comparison. You really have to think about, what am I unlocking here and what am I getting away from that's really costing me in indirect ways. So to sum up, if you're on a modern, modern financial tools, and you're a modern finance department, you're able to deliver timely, actionable decision support to all the stakeholders in your organization, because you get data sooner, it's more reliable, it's and you don't have to deal with some of the pain associated with that siloed nature of legacy systems. When that data comes sooner and it's consistent, then that confidence in the data goes up, and people feel more confident in making decisions based on it. You're going to be able to get rid of paper and other inefficient processes. It's not just paper, sometimes it's data flows, or sometimes some of the most inefficient processes I see in finance departments, where people are having to manipulate data in Excel workbooks, create pivot tables, and do a bunch of manipulation just so they can get data in a form that can then be brought into their accounting system as a journal entry. But if you do all these things well, then it's also going to improve the competitiveness of your business. If I can make better decisions faster, if I have higher productivity in my back office, this is all things that are going to help you compete better in the marketplace. All right, so you obviously knew from the invitation I'm going to be talking about Sage Intacct today. We believe Sage Intacct is an excellent cornerstone. If you're going to be going after a next generation or digital operations platform strategy, then Sage Intacct, we believe, is a very important part to start with. And so I'm going to back up a few slides here for a second and go back here. When we look at this center of this diagram, you'll see Next Gen ERP or DOP in there. Sage Intacct fits there as the digital operations platform that everything else can work with and around. And the reason for that is that it brings a certain combination of things from a technology standpoint. And because thinking as a finance team, that system of ledgers and that reporting platform are the thing that is kind of the center of the universe from a business reporting and performance reporting standpoint. We need that to be the right technology, or else all of this other stuff is going to be super hard. So going back to where I was, why do we recommend Sage Intacct? Well, first of all, it meets all of those criteria for what a next-gen platform is. So it's native cloud from the first line of code. It gives us that analytical capability by providing a multi-dimensional chart of accounts and all of the automation tools to make our finance teams more efficient. When we talk about sophisticated visibility for real-time decision making, there's a couple things buried in that. Sophisticated visibility, how am I presenting information to the people that need it? Can that be accessed directly? Can it be accessed and presented in a way that's useful to people? And is the data current, right? Real-time decision making means that I need to have real-time data, which means that data has to be flowing automatically. So part of that is the next bullet, which is best of breed, easy integration to other essential internal systems. And so essentially, Sage Intacct is very much focused on the Office of Finance. And finance is going to be all of the different functions that are typically part of the finance office are going to be part of the Sage Intacct package. However, there's always going to be things that are ancillary that need to be connected or that they're extensions of that functionality. How easy is it to get that? With Intacct, it's extremely easy. And connecting to virtually any other application that may exist in your back office is possible through tools that we at Net at Work recommend that work seamlessly with Sage Intacct. We talked about the fresh modern user interface. I'll let you decide for yourself when we open it up in a minute. But importantly, part of the reason the experience is so great with this is that it's built by accountants for accountants. It's not built by engineers for accountants. No offense to any engineers on the call. But the idea is that people who've actually lived the life of a finance team have been involved in the design of the capabilities as well as the user experience so that you really have the right tools to do the job at your fingertips in a way that's easy to understand. Technology is a very important aspect of this too. You know, the biggest buzzword that you absolutely cannot hide from today is AI. But Sage, like many other business application vendors, is investing heavily in AI, and they actually have AI-driven technology in market in the product today being used by their customers. Example is listed here as the GL outlier detection. There's actual logic in the system where it'll continuously analyze your usage patterns in the system and flag transactions that are out of pattern for any account in your system so that somebody who knows what they're looking at can look at it and decide whether or not it needs, whether it's an issue or not. So if you suddenly get a transaction in an account that's outside of a threshold that you set, it will flag it and not commit it until somebody actually goes in there and reviews and approves it. And this can help catch mistakes. It can help improve visibility to out of pattern transactions that are valid. It could, in the worst case scenario, help identify fraudulent transactions that are flowing through the system. There's a lot of potential there. There's other things listed here, rules-based feeds from banks to automate all of your reconciliations, both cash and card. I mentioned the reporting, the ability to deliver and visualize data that can be fully interactive. That includes both non-financial and financial data. This is super important for understanding the entire context of what you're looking at from a performance standpoint. And obviously the user experience. This is 2023 going on 2024. The expectation is that I shouldn't have to work in a Windows remote desktop application environment. I want to be able to do my work wherever I happen to be on whatever device I happen to have handy. So being able to interact with the system in a smart way just as effectively on a desktop computer as I do on a handheld device. We talked about the technology that we recommend. We always use the term cloud connected back office. It's super important to be thinking about data flows. And I say data flows all the time. This is something that people don't really, I think they bury their head in the sand about how this is impacting their organization. But when data is not flowing effectively in your organization, it's breaking things. And it's breaking reporting, it's breaking decisions, decision velocity. It's doing all sorts of negative things for your organization. So we really emphasize to our clients the importance to think about what it would take to truly automate their data flows. With Intacct and with our the iPass tool we recommend, which is Data Blend, it allows us to not only connect to over 400 different Intacct marketplace applications directly, but it also gives us the ability to connect through web services to literally any other web services capable application out there, whether there's a pre-built integration or not. It can also consume, if you happen to have an old AS400 based mainframe system out there that can only spit out a tab delimited file, Data Blend can help sweep that up, consume it, transform it into useful form, and automatically ingest that into your Sage Intacct system. It really is almost magical the way that it can really improve the velocity of data flows in your organization. Last one there, obviously, if you have data sitting on a SQL server somewhere or wherever that also needs to somehow find its way to your Sage Intacct system, that information can also be brought in through a direct database connection on the back end of that system. So once again, lots of options for making sure that everything that you're trying to do is automatically flowing where it needs to go and getting the finance team in a position to where you can be really focused on strategic activities. I mentioned those marketplace applications. There's just a snapshot of a handful of them, but all of these different brands that you see represented on this slide have, vetted, tested, out of the box integrations available directly to Sage Intacct. Some of them are even available to be provisioned off the Sage Intacct price list. So like, Avalara and Lockstep and things like that. But the idea here is that for just about everything that's outside of the scope of what Sage Intacct does, doesn't mean that you can't use it in a fully integrated way. It just means that you have a variety of different marketplace partners that you may be able to choose from to solve that problem. As a great example would be AP automation. You can work with Bill.com, you can work with Topology, you can work with MineralTree, or you can use the native functionality that exists within Sage Intacct, all of which have different characteristics and capabilities and trade-offs. And that's what we can help you with at Net at Work to help make sure that you get the exact right combination. Sage Intacct also has the ability, this multi-entity architecture it has, allows it to scale up to the very largest, highest volume customers, all the way down to, we have clients that have only 1 or 2 people in their finance office that are effectively and cost effectively using Sage Intacct to manage their financial operations. These are some extreme examples of specific clients on Sage Intacct, but just when you think about the total amount of transactions that are flowing through these organizations, they're having the same exact performance and user experience as those small customers are because of the flexibility and scalability of the Sage Intacct platform. If you could only imagine, bringing in, 8 million timesheets a year, or having over 1.81 million vendors active in your system at any given time. This is a pretty robust system. All right, I've been singing its praises, but I do think it's important for all of you as you do your due diligence and look around and see what other people are saying. You can go out to the reputation platforms that focus on this industry, both G2 Crowd and Trust Radius. Give Sage Intacct some of their highest honors. G2 Crowd in particular, Sage Intacct, I think for 6 or 7 years has had the awarded highest customer satisfaction for cloud ERP to Sage Intacct. But not just the customers, also the endorsement from the AICPA as a preferred provider of financial solutions, the only vendor that has that distinction with AICPA. And industry analysts like Gartner and others consistently position Sage Intacct in that top right quadrant, or the visionary quadrant, for cloud financial management, really as an innovator and visionary, taking clients really further into the next gen sphere than anyone else. All right, so obviously, implementing new accounting software is a big deal, and we understand that there's a reason why people put it off. I use the analogy that switching from one accounting software to another is like having a heart transplant. You only do it if your doctor tells you you're going to die, right? It's a gruesome example, but that's kind of how people think about it. It's costly, it's disruptive, it's an extra job for everybody in finance while they work through that migration. And we understand that. We have over 6,000 customers that we've served over the years at Net@Work that have had to go through that same experience. And so we bring a lot of expertise to shepherd our clients through this process because we understand that it's not just the features and functionality, it's the decisions that you make in the configuration, it's the work that we can take off of your plate through this process. We really want to make sure that you get to your ideal point B with as little friction and suffering as possible. But it is a big project, you know, I don't want to sugarcoat that part of it, but it's worth doing. If you get all those benefits that I talked about earlier in this session, then I think the payoff is there for you as an organization. So with that being said, let's switch gears, and I'm going to actually take you into the product. So what you should see on my screen right now, and it does appear that I'm sharing my screen. We do have what you would experience and if you logged into Sage Intacct. So I'm not going to take you through the login process, but it's basically like logging into any web service. You go to the home page, you click on login, you put in your credentials, and it brings you into the application securely. A couple of technical things about it. People are very concerned about security. The system has the ability to enforce all levels of password security, multi-factor authentication. It can be part of your larger single sign-on scheme if you have single sign-on as part of your technology architecture in your organization. Very, very sophisticated security tools. When I log in, the system's going to take me to where I tell it I like to start. In my case, I like to start with my dashboard. And what we're looking at in this particular demo environment is an example of a dashboard that a controller might have. And I pulled this up just to kind of explain to you the general difference in experience that Intacct brings compared to a lot of legacy tools. Instead of taking you to a boring menu where it shows you all of the different transaction entry and other menu items that you can choose from, they're all there. If I want to get to them, I can find those. But what it does instead is it says, let me take you to a starting point where you can instantly see the information that's most important to you. In this fully customizable experience, I can create a dashboard that shows me exactly what I want to see, or I can create a series of dashboards for different contexts and deploy those dashboards to different users in my organizations that are all tailored to the experience or set of data that that particular user wants to see. What we're looking at on this particular dashboard is these things at the top here are called performance cards, and these can be a calculated value of any kind that includes information from anywhere in the system. So I can have it calculate any type of financial or operational data that's been captured in the system from any application that makes up part of Intacct. And I can have a calculation or KPI presented to me. That information can be financial, it can be non-financial, it can be, like I said, a calculation or ratio. And I can assign indicators that tell me whether or not this is lower than it used to be. So even though the arrow is down, that's green, which is positive. It can also include comparative metrics. So once again, more context for this number as to whether or not it's good or bad. These can be whatever you want them to be, and you can have as many of them as you want throughout the system. So when we talk about the level of sophistication and value of the velocity of data, this is super important that you be able to get this information. This is live. This is not reporting against the data warehouse. This is not pulling information that only gets updated, you know, every 24 hours or less frequently. This is as recent as the most recent transaction that came through the system. In addition to performance cards, I can embed full financial reports. These financial reports are fully interactive. And so as I'm looking at this P&L, if I'm concerned about a particular number in here, let's say, what's this trade shows an exhibits number, I can click on that and it allows me to drill into the general ledger details. And if I want to, I can drill all the way back into the AP transactions that made up this. Let me drill all the way back. And sure enough, wow, that's way overdue. but I can get all the way back into the AP subledger and see that, wow, there was actually, I didn't need to click there, I meant to click on this guy. I can actually see the supporting documentation that came through with this invoice. There's all sorts of things that I can do directly from that dashboard without ever leaving. You'll notice that since I'm in a browser context, that the system has the ability to just pop more browser windows as often as I need them. I can't show this to you in our demo here, but I have a multiple monitor experience here in my office, and so I can have, you know, lots of different windows with different bits of my financial information on different screens, so I can work on multiple things simultaneously without having to get out of one to get into the other. You'll notice that the reporting, in addition to being interactive where I can drill down on it, also gives me a lot of data visualization options. I can assign conditional formatting. I can add things like spark lines that you might use in Excel and things like that. But the idea is that any of these reports I can work with and deal with, you know, the way I want to work with them. I can have that information presented the way that I want. And if I want to take it out to Excel, I can certainly just click the Excel button here and open up this guy in my old favorite, which is Excel, to do whatever I want to there. And this Excel obviously is a snapshot, but it's the exact same information with all of the presentation options preserved. And so if all I'm doing is adding some additional context or footnotes or whatever it is I want to this report before I send it on to someone else, super easy to do that. All right, that's not really why I came here though. All right, I want to talk about a few things. And unfortunately, we are running a little short on time, so I'm not going to be able to show you as much as I would ideally like to. But I promise you, you're going to get lots of options to see as much as you like to see. So in my dashboard, you know, once again, the ability to visualize data in charts and graphs. I'm going to take you into a different environment here. I did want to make sure I emphasize to you the ability to take all kinds of information and not only visualize it in a way that's hopefully useful and compelling, but also to be able to come in. So if you're a healthcare provider and you wanted to be able to track key performance metrics, how much is it? How much are we billing per surgery event, or how much is revenue are we generating per surgeon year to date, and have that information shown to me each time I log into the system. I have the ability to incorporate that operational data, the number of procedures, the number of surgeons, all that information can be synchronized from my electronic health record system. And that data flow can be automated through the tools that we recommend, so that you're never having to figure out, how do I get all this information from these two systems into Excel, or how do I build a data warehouse that can house all the information from both systems and then build reports based on that. These key operational statistics that matter the most for the performance of your organization can be gathered and captured directly within the Sage Intacct system to give you the ability to provide this type of comprehensive, full context reporting performance experience to whoever the stakeholder is that needs this information. So once again, it is really important to be able to have this level of calculation. And this is one way of presenting it in a performance card. This could also be in a report or some other presentation. You have lots of options within the Sage Intacct system. This experience can be rolled out not just to people on the finance team, but it can be rolled out to executives. It can be rolled out to directors across your enterprise who have budget responsibility, and they have the same level, limited by permissions, of course, but same level of access that you see me experiencing here, to be able to come in and see the information that you've chosen to expose to them, and to even drill down into it if you choose to give them the ability to drill down. And once again, I'm only able to scratch the surface of the capabilities of the reporting in here. But the fundamental thing, and I mentioned this on a slide and you might have missed it, is that underlying all this is the idea that Sage Intacct is a multi-dimensional system. And a multi-dimensional system is different than most legacy systems in that if your old accounting system had account codes set up as 4-digit natural account hyphen 3-digit location hyphen 2-digit department. And those 9 characters all together make up an account. Intacct says, let's break them up. Let's have them all be independent, separately maintained code tables, and we'll assemble the combination that makes sense. And the reason that's super valuable is that as we're able to look at a dashboard here, you can see in this case that I have the ability to slice and dice data by any one of these dimensions. So if I change my location selection here, since those dimensions are all being tracked, I'm not having to filter based on a mask or something like that. I'm able to go through and recalculate information in real time based on any dimension. And this dashboard's only set up to have that location filter, but I could have just as easily added other dimensions. I'm going to go back and kind of show you what this means in the context of another report here. So this P&L, we were drilling down on the trade show expenses. I'm going to go into the financial report writer to wrap up here, kind of talk about this dimensionality a little bit more. When we go into the report writing tool, one of the things you'll notice if you're paying attention is that nothing in here requires that you understand anything about the tables underlying the data. This is one of the biggest frustrations we see with people who use legacy systems, is that they don't feel like it's easy for them to get the data that they want, because you really have to understand the relationships between data tables and joins. And if you're not super technical, you're not a database administrator, you end up having to either go without or rely on IT or outside consultants to write reports for you. Everything in the report writer in Sage Intacct is drag and drop, point and click, and something that a typical finance user can learn to use. Now I'm going to take you into something very specific here because of our time constraints. But when I'm defining the columns I want to include in our report, you'll see that our account name, our actuals for the current month, our budget for the current month, our budget difference in dollars, budget difference in, I think that's in percent. That matches, I think, if we go back over here, sure it is. Actual budget, budget different dollars, budget different percent. Okay, so that's really cool. So I'm glad that those match. So when I go back over here, one of the things I'm able to do is, so let's just say for those actuals, there is a particular column. No, for those actuals, I'd like to see this broken out by my locations instead of just one column. So I want a separate column for each one of my locations. Well, by using dimensions, I can come down to this expand by function and I can just tell it, I want to see this broken out by locations, and click set. And I want to preview a live report with this change. And so sure enough, what I've just done to that exact same report we were just looking at is I now have a version of it that is showing me my actuals for each location as well as a grand total. And of course, it left my other columns the same because I didn't tell it to do anything differently. Super easy to slice and dice your information and have it represent the information both vertically and horizontally by any dimension. So let's talk about the horizontal aspect of that. So just like with columns, I can do the same in rows. So as I come down in here into my expenses, and let's just say I have payroll and related expenses, seeing that broken out according to these accounts, maybe not so useful to me, but maybe seeing it broken out by which department is that spend is going to would be useful. So I click OK on that. I'm going to do the same thing, preview a live report. And now when I go down here and look at my payroll and related expenses, it is showing me broken out by my departments where that payroll expense is going. And just for that section, everything else is done by a GL Natural account like it was originally set up. So, all right, so we're a little bit over the promised time for this. So what I do want to do is I want to show you one more thing. So in this other environment I have here, I talked about some of the technology innovation that's available in the system. The technology for AP automation is native to Sage Intacct. And what I mean by that, AP automation means that the system has the ability to consume AP invoices. It has the ability to read those invoices, automatically create a new draft document from that raw invoice document, whether it's a PDF or an email or some other kind of image file. It will read it. It will figure out who the vendor is. It will figure out what the details are on that invoice, and it will create a document for you. And it will, over time, learn to do it with 90% accuracy. Let me see if I can find an example of one that was brought in this way. There's one. When I come in and I look at one of these invoices, this invoice was brought in via the AP automation. A couple things happen. First of all, this is something that can be brought in detail or in summary. So if you want an invoice to come in broken out according to each detail line on the vendor's invoice, it can do that for you. And it will look at how you've coded these transactions in the past and automatically code it to the right combination of accounts and dimensions. It will also attach a copy of the original invoice. And so that invoice, that wasn't the one. Here we go. All the information that was brought in here was based on something that looked like this. And it had all of this information, all this detail that we see on the screen right here. All of that ended up in our transaction down here in the detail. All of that information with all that broken out, with all the description dropped into the memo, all that. So the idea is, how did that get here? There's two different paths in the AP automation and Sage Intacct for it to get there. One is that when you're working in AP, if you have that, it's sitting in your desktop or in your email, you can choose to upload it. And when you upload it, you can either drag and drop it, or you can browse to the file and it'll suck it in there and the system will process it. And within a few seconds or maybe a minute, it'll show up as a draft invoice in this list. The other alternative is that you can, it'll generate a unique email address for your organization that you can provide directly to your vendors, and they can just email it to that email address, and it will do the exact same thing as if you uploaded it manually through the AP module in Sage Intacct. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is hard for me to show because I don't have a new one to process for you. But the reason this can really reduce the kind of routine, rote, everyday data entry responsibilities of AP in your organization, in some cases by 50 or 75%, where so much of that is consumed by manually keying entries and manually attaching supporting document and all that stuff. This is stuff that is brought in, you can tell this came in through the AP automation because it says source bill upload. This is where you're going to see transformation in the productivity of your organization. And that's just one way we automate the life of the next generation finance team. We can automate other aspects of transaction entry. We can automate allocations. We can make reports automatically get distributed. We can automate data flows, both through Intacct and through the tools that we recommend for connecting to your other systems. We're going to improve your insight into how your teams are performing by improving the speed of the data, improving the timeliness and accuracy of information. So these are all things that are going to help transform your organization from a legacy finance team to a next generation. So what I'd like to do, since we're about out of time, is I do want to wrap up. If your situation today is that you have a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of human elbow grease being applied to basic finance operations, moving data manually, manual data entry, a lot of lags and delays and things getting into the system. You're continuing to pay a lot of money to your legacy vendor. You're paying maintenance support or subscription fees for a product that's not evolving and generally not giving you a lot of the benefits we talked about today. A big one for a lot of people is that it's very difficult to deliver timely and accurate information to stakeholders. If the data isn't is only being delivered well after the fact, it loses its relevancy. If it's not interactive, people have questions that they struggle to or don't get answered, or if it's just not interesting, if it's just a standard, FASB required financial report, a lot of business consumers don't understand that format very well and don't get much from it. And finally, the disruptions associated with being on old technology, old versions, version upgrades, version compatibility issues, all those things are going to continue to plague you until you get out of that legacy context. So once again, these are all things that might be true for you. If one or more of these is your situation, this is going to be something you're going to have to deal with at some point. When you're ready to have that conversation about modernization of your systems, or if you anything at all about anything that we talked about today, if you'd like to call me, you're welcome to call me or email me. I'll be happy to chat about your situation. After this session today, you will get a call from somebody on our team who's just going to be looking for your feedback. And if you would like to get more information or a more detailed demonstration of Sage Intacct, we're happy to work with you on that. I also encourage you to go out and check out our recorded content on the Net at Work website. We have a lot of great product and demonstration content there that can help you learn more about Sage Intacct. So I appreciate you giving me a few minutes, especially like I said here in December when it's so hard to find time. And I hope you can make it to one of our future webinars as well. Thanks so much.